The first choice all Elden Ring players have to make is what class to start as. Personally, I like using the Wretch because I hate myself. But overall, it really doesn't matter what class you start as you can always change your weapons or armor at any time. But what if you couldn't change your weapons or armor? What if you had to take the gear that you started with all the way to the end of the game? Today, we'll be seeing what that might look like when I ask, can you beat Elden Ring with only starting gear? Before we can even start, I need to pick which class to start as. There are a few options. If I was a real man, then I'd choose to start as the Wretch. If I was a smart man, then I'd choose to start as the Samurai. And if I was a pussy, then I would choose to start as the Astrologer. But I'm a habitual fence sitter, so I decided on the middle ground and started as the Vagabond. The Vagabond comes with sturdy armor, a decent weapon selection, and a pretty cool name, so it seemed like a fair choice. No keepsake was taken, and I began the game as Nightman. Yeah, I really don't have a witty name for this one. After taking my finger out of my dead finger maiden, With the real game having begun, I slowly waddled my way to the gate front, and received an accord from Melina. Okay, so while I do some early game prep in the background, we need to talk about the rules. Rule 1 is that my weapons and armor will be limited to what the Vagabond starts with, which is the heater shield, a longsword, and a halberd, which you might as well forget as I never ended up using it. The second rule is that I won't use any talismans. And the final rule is that I won't be using any Ashes of War other than the ones included on my weapons. Well, kind of. I did end up using the square off Ash of War on my sword so I could change the affinity, and the no skill Ash of War on my shield. So how about in exchange for that, I won't use any buffs, so no sticking meat in my mouth or drinking strange fluids. Deal? Well, regardless, it's about time for me to get back to the game, as I've arrived at the first boss, Margit. I did die 7 times, but that's just because I hadn't upgraded yet. Being serious, this fight was important, as it did show just how important the stance breaks off a square off would be going forward. After the fight, I sat at the side of Grace, and that's when Melina made another appearance, and invited me to Round Table Pizza. While there, I upgraded my longsword and leveled my vigor. Returning to Stormvale Castle in search of my first Great Rune, I made my way in, and I even avoided being raped in the gas station bathroom. Then, I just did some parkour to avoid most of the fighting, and now it's time for Godric. He was quite literally the easiest boss in the entire game. And honestly, I'm kinda disappointed that I got hit once. On to Liurnia, and I won't be here long as I'm just here to grab my second Great Rune. As I grabbed the Academy Glintstone key, I started to feel like I was playing the game wrong by just going from main boss to main boss. This might be unpopular, but the part of Elden Ring I enjoy the most isn't the bosses, but the mindless collecting of items as I slowly improve my character. Now that I say that out loud though, it sounds like the signs of an undiagnosed mental illness. Well, I don't know, let's move on. In Raya Lucaria, I just had to avoid the Burger King crown-ass enemies until I got to the next boss fight. The Red Wolf of Radagon, and oh, it's dead. Honestly, one of the bosses of all time. Then, I rolled up to Renala's boss arena with an entire Brinks truck full of runes for some reason, and looking back, this was dumb. But fortunately, I was able to domesticate my own Renala on the first try, and now she's just gonna sit there. Now that I have 2 Great Runes, I can enter Leyndell, but I need to get there, so into the ravine I go. By the way, these giant land squirts look suspiciously like testicles? Strange, but now it's time for the climb. A couple elevator rides later, and now it's time for the next boss fight, which is this magma whale, and he's definitely a boss. Now that we've arrived in Altus Plateau, there's a lot of collecting to do, and I really have nothing to talk about while I go about collecting golden seeds and sacred tears, so I want to have a little story time about how I first came to play Elden Ring. My previous meandering game of choice was The Witcher 3. I mean, there's swords, magic, and boobs. What's not to love? Well, Ciri, but that's not the point. What was I saying? Oh, so I first played Elden Ring under the assumption that it was like The Witcher 3, because Steam told me that they were similar. And I mean, Elden Ring does have swords, magic, and boobs, but it's also very hard and will kick your ass. What kind of point was I even trying to make here? Oh, I was trying to fill for time and telling you that I was tricked into becoming a masochist. Oh, and fuck Ciri. Now for Draconic Tree Sentinel, and bad news, this fight broke my deathless streak, so I was kinda sad about that, but I got him on the run back. Before beginning the back half of the game, I imbued my weapons with Ashes of War. Once on the West Capital ramparts, Melina returned again to tell me that she'd no longer be in need of my help, and left me in the dust. Gold free was easy, and normally this would be an important point in the game as you'd get your final talisman slot. But, well, no talismans for me. The King of Landell is next, and surprise surprise, Mr. Feet is back, and he's trying to get me to act up, but I will not prematurely ejaculate. No deaths later, and more gods down for the count. Bro forgot his quick revive. I checked on the thorns to see if they were okay, and thankfully they were. But that's when Melina came crawling back because apparently she needs my help again. She gives me the magic elevator key and off I go into the winter wonderland that is the mountaintops of the giants. Fire Giant is normally where my challenges start to fall off the rails and devolve into me sniveling in the corner, but not in this run. Looking at my deaths so far, the first 9 bosses have only resulted in 8 deaths, so honestly, I'd be happy if those deaths stayed under 30. With Fire Giant cooked, let's move on, because we have a cardinal sin to commit. I talked to Melina and said yes to whatever she was asking, but I should have read the fine print because then she roofied me and started a fire in the Pacific Palisades. When I woke up, I shit myself when I saw I somehow ended up in Skypiea. What the fuck? How did I end up here? After getting my bearings, I eventually ended up finding my arch rivals, the Michelin Men. But it's kind of strange how this game works, because last run they pushed my poo in, but in this run it wasn't that bad. I did end up using sleep pots, but I never said I couldn't, so I did. On to Malakath, and same thing, last run he was really hard, but in this run he kinda just rolled over. As I restored death to the world, I was starting to think that this run may have been too easy, but Sir Gideon Ofnir the All-Knowing proved this wrong. He lived up to his name, and knew that the only way to beat me was to overwhelm me with attacks so I'd never be able to set up the big square-off hits I've been relying on. It didn't help that Gideon's brittle ass is somehow the undisputed Poise King. He took 4 square-off hits straight to the chest and didn't even stutter. In total, Gideon took 63 tries over 2 separate days, and honestly, it was a demoralizing experience. You can tell how angry I was by the fact that I kept hitting him even after he died. This fight and the next 2 are why this video didn't come out sooner, because honestly, I suck at this game. Everything before Gideon took 1 day, and everything after took 4 whole days. Let's finish this up, because it really isn't that interesting. It was just me being bad at this game. Godfrey's first phase wasn't too bad, but once he became Horaloo, he tossed my shit around like a hacky sack. Eventually, I figured something out. I needed to be faster. So I stripped down, and that's not against the rules because I never said I couldn't take items off, just that they were the only items I had access to. And ultimately, after 22 deaths, it just took a perfect run. All that stands between me and freedom now is Renala's ex-husband and the Cosmic Slime. This fight is a bit difficult because of this. I didn't know this at that time, but the Vagabond Knight set has a pitiful amount of holy resistance. I'm pretty sure it's the worst of all starting classes other than the Wretch. In the end though, this wasn't a fight against me versus Radagon and the Elden Beast, but it was a fight against my own choking tendencies. It just took time and 28 deaths. I really only took 3 fights to Elden Beast, but I guess 3rd time lucky, so here we are at the end. As I restored the Elden Ring and became the Elden Lord, I proved that even a mouth-breathing heathen like me can beat Elden Ring with only starting gear. Well, that's it. I want to thank anyone who's hearing this for watching, and if you're still watching, then maybe subscribe for more gaming challenges in the future. I know that it's been a while since my last Elden Ring video, and that's not because I don't like the game, it's because I suck at the game, and that makes it hard to do challenge type videos. I like making challenge type videos not really for the challenge, but for the creative writing opportunities they allow. I already have another Elden Ring challenge planned, but it'll be a while before that one comes out, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Again, I want to thank you all for watching and wish you a great rest of your day. Peace.